to get better reception here wherever I am in rural Pennsylvania. Well, welcome to another QB Power Hour. Today is our last in the series of QBO Advanced Feature Deep Dives. Today we're going to be talking about users and roles. Now, this was one of those things as we were talking, meeting with Intuit about, what do we want to talk about in these in this feature deep dives. Users and roles was kind of like an appendix, right? Like, do we have enough information to talk about users and roles for a whole hour? Right, because it is users in QuickBooks Online in general was always, to me, as I worked there, was really just like a light switch, right? Like you turned it on or off. There was no dimmer like there is in desktop, where you have, especially enterprise, where you could get very granular. But now we've determined that it's at a point where it's getting there, right? So we want to talk about that. We're talking a little bit about the roadmap of users and roles in QBO Advanced. So we'll kick it off here, and Michelle, introduce yourself to it.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Michelle Long, CPA with an MBA in entrepreneurship, owner of Long for Success. Very glad to have you all joining me today. Dan's doing most of the honors today. I'm just here supporting in the background, since he's the one who's up with the latest, greatest information for you today. But we're very glad to have you guys joining us, and love to see you in the Facebook group or the LinkedIn group. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, we're closing in on 12,000 members in the Facebook group. So great to see everyone joining the Facebook group, and it's really awesome to see how people are helping people in the group. Somebody throws out a question, somebody's right there to answer. So my name is Dan DeLong, owner of Dan With. Worked at Intuit for 18 years, co-host of the QB Power Hour, as well as Workshop Wednesdays. Oddly enough, on Wednesdays. At schoolofbookkeeping.com, and tech editor of QBO for Dummies. Working on currently the 7th edition, which I'm glad to report the author actually is using QBO Advanced for his writing the authoring of that. That was my feedback last year, as they did everything in Plus, but never talked about some of the advanced features. So this year is focused on they're doing it in advance, so we got to talk about the things that you can't do that aren't in advanced in that series. So coming out soon. The details about some upcoming webinars. Of course, today we're talking about users and roles, and then next time we'll be talking about customer service for accounting firms. We'll have a guest where he'll talk about his whole career has actually been centered around customer service consulting for large companies, corporations. So he'll talk a little bit about how best to do customer service as an accountant, not necessarily the customer service you're getting as an accounting firm. It's how much what kind of customer service you're giving to your clients. And then we'll talk a little bit about the RIP to IOP with ADP.
Acronym City.
Yes. So as you may or may not know, Intuit Online Payroll is being discontinued. What's the plan, the transition for that, and how do you evaluate other payroll services if that result of that transition or migration is not up to your standards for the payroll services? Of course, here we have the links there for the PDFs of the slides, the recordings on Michelle's YouTube, as well as the podcast. But you can get all that on qbpowerhour.com as well. So you can just pop in there. Michelle, I think I included the QB Power Hour webinar blog article that we have for QB. Sorry, I'm thinking and typing and talking at the same time. It is just not working out. There, I threw it in the chat.
There you go.
No, that's not what I wanted to throw in the chat.
I can throw, here's the slides I'll put out there, the handouts.
That's what I wanted to show right here. What's on the screen? the deep dive series. There we go. All right, so let me go back here to present. All right. little bit of the housekeeping. Whoa, my slides went crazy.
There, stop.
So questions, if you have questions specific about what we're talking about here today during the webinar, put them in the Q&A because that makes it a lot easier to manage the Q&A as they come in. We can flag them to answer live. We can table them if they need to be followed up on. Please put the questions pertinent to the content in Q&A. Comments, if you just have something to talk about or mention, like, hello, I'm from Alaska, go ahead and put that in the chat because that rolls by and it's pretty hard for us to keep up on if you put a question in the comment in the chat, excuse me. And then of course you have the handouts. You can download those from our website, qbpowerhour.com, as well as the prior webinars. You can rewatch those. They're all there as well. All right. So our agenda today, we're going to be talking about the users and roles. And we're going to start off by talking a little bit about the Intuit login. Because when I worked at Intuit, that was a little bit of a confusing point. Like what's tied to your login, what email address versus login name versus I've got multiple logins. What do I do with that? Can I merge logins? That sort of thing. So we'll talk a little bit about that because everything that is dealing with these users and permissions is going to be tied to a login. So we want to talk a little bit. Start there first. Then we'll talk a little bit about the desktop user overview and then the QBO Advanced User options. And then there's a neat function inside of QBO Advanced called the preview of the role, which is it's a good time saver. And then desktop migration of users, which is a neat option for those going from desktop to online. And then talk a little bit about the users and roles roadmap of the future. So let's first start off with our poll. Set the framing here of what version what version of QuickBooks are your clients mostly using? Oop.
And Dan, while they're doing that poll question, Sandra had asked about, did you say QB payroll is no longer available? I just wanted to make sure I got the answer right. IOP, Intuit Online Payroll, is the one that's being discontinued, and QuickBooks Online Payroll is still available, correct?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, that's what's happening is that Intuit Online Payroll, which is a standalone in-between product for just payroll, which the history of was PayCycle that Intuit acquired and brought that in as their payroll offering for QBO, and now that's turned into the QBO payroll service. What's happening to that? That is being discontinued. That specific standalone payroll offering that was Intuit Online Payroll, which was actually a white labeled payroll service. Even Bank of America used Intuit Online Payroll.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Service. Yeah.
Okay.
Costco had an Intuit Online Payroll, so they're discontinuing that standalone only Intuit Online Payroll, which, if you remember a couple of years ago, they migrated the login users, and that's what happens a lot of times with an acquisition. You're seeing it now with QB Time, right? T-Sheets was acquired by Intuit. They had their own logins, and now they're trying to get everything into the Intuit login system. That causes some challenges, as if you're looking at our Facebook group, at least once a day, I think somebody posts about the QB Time login snags, right? So let's, which segues really nicely into what we're going to talk about with logins in general. Sure, and the poll here looks like both is about half. Online is about 37%, and desktop only is 11. So let me go ahead and let's get started here. So users and roles, we want to talk about the Intuit login, which is the be all and end all of how you sign in to Intuit products and services. So your login is, it is the login and password that you use to sign in. And what we referred to it internally at Intuit was an auth ID, right? There was an authentication ID, the number that's associated with the login and password. It's basically who you are at Intuit, right? So when you sign into anything that uses that login, it's what identifies you as you, right? So the login name, some things about that is that they must be unique, right? So you can only have, just like your social security number, you can't have more than one social security number. That needs to be unique. So it is what identifies you with who you are at Intuit. So it can be, for simplicity purposes, usually something that's unique to you is your email address, right? So in theory, nobody else should have your email address. So when you're setting up your Intuit login, oftentimes that is the preferred option, setting up your login based on your email address. Well, depending on how long you've created logins, you may already have a login that's associated with your email address, or that is your email address. And if you tried to create a new login, it would say, no, it's already in use, right? So if I showed you how many logins that I have for Intuit products, there would be not enough room on the screen, right? Because I've needed to create logins to see what the customer sees, or see what it is that you're experiencing, or test cases. So I've had to create multiple Intuit logins, and I don't know where what everything's tied to, but you can share, multiple logins can share the same email address. So like if you've ever been invited as an accountant, that email address is used on multiple different logins, you'll see that on the invitation. It'll say, use this Intuit user ID, or use this one. And then of course it's got the middle part X'd out for privacy purposes. But you can have multiple Intuit logins tied to the same email address, but not all logins are going to be the email address. So you have to be, it's just a little bit of things to verify and make sure that it's just better understanding as to how those logins actually work. So you manage your login at accounts.intuit.com, and that you can update your password, your sign-in preferences, you can update your contact information, and you can see what products are attached to that login. So like if I go in there under myself, I can see links to QuickBooks Online, the desktop products, my Mint my Mint login, if attached to that, TurboTax, it gives you a launching point to be able to access those things that are tied to that login. Now, what gets a little confusing is that there's logins, and then there's company users, and then there's logins. There are things that are tied to the login specifically, and then there are things that are tied to company users. So the way I wanted to help explain, or have an analogy, is that the login is a key or a license, like your driver's license, and the company users is a car, right? So there's things that you put in the trunk of your car, like services, the QuickBooks Online, or the merchant account, or payroll, or things like that. That goes in the trunk of the car. But the login is what allows you the access to be able to get into the car, to be able to access those products and services. So there's things that are attached to specifically to keys, your login, right? And that's your ProAdvisor login, your certifications, your profile, the Intuit Camps account, the TurboTax Mint. Those are tied specifically to the login itself. So if you created a second login, your ProAdvisor certifications, your profiles, the things that are specifically attached to Intuit Camps account. When I talk about Camps, that's the customer. What it actually stands for is the Customer Account Management Portal site. That's where you go to manage your desktop, your specific Intuit account and what's tied to that. So you could specifically, you could see, you could be tied to multiple Intuit accounts, on the back end of the system, because that auth ID that we talked about with the login is the key. It can be tied to multiple Intuit accounts. So hopefully this isn't too getting into the weeds of logins, but just to understand that there is a distinction between the login and the company users, things in the car. So your QBO, your QBOA, payroll, merchant services, Intuit Tax Online, those are all things that are associated with services, and those services are then attached to the login. So you could have an email address that's associated with your company user, right? Your accountant user invitation that could be different than your login email address user. Ultimately, you were going to ask a question. I'm just rambling on.
Yes. Okay. So back one slide, you just were talking about camps. And so somebody here says, I don't have camps account for my own firm. How do you set this up when you're also on another firm's camp? So her situation is, she used to work for some firm and now she's gone on her own, but she still does some stuff with her old firm. And she says she's on their list of camps, but doesn't have any authority. And so she's kind of confused on having, multiple IDs and wanting to consolidate and what camps is. So can you answer? She had several questions there.
Right. And so it's not necessarily, we're not going to get through it in the hour that we have here today, but the best situation is to create your own firm, right? To create your own firm, and you can do that in multiple ways. You can use a different email address, and then invite yourself as a full company user to that firm, and then transfer the primary admin account to that new one that you just invited. So, and then delete the old one. So it's a little bit of a shell game when it comes to your login and the firm, because you can't create a new firm if that email address is already tied to another firm. So that is the challenge I think that you're running into, is that when you go to sign up for your own firm, you can't, because you're now given you're now presented with, oh, you've already attached to this firm. So you need to create your own firm, and you can do that in a variety of ways with a new login, or if you're using a Google account, you can have a +1, and that's now a different email address to the login, because the logins have to be unique, right? We just talked about that being a unique situation. So if you have, accounting at youraccountingfirm.com, and that's a G Suite or Gmail address, you could do accounting +1 at myaccountingfirm.com. And now that's a unique login. It's a unique email address, but it automatically Gmail forwards that back to your original email. I probably glazed people over by that explanation, but it's possible, right? It's possible to create a new firm using the same email address if you're using a Gmail or web-based email where you can have a +1. Hopefully that answered some of the confusion there. But yeah, things in the car are going to be services and things that are attached to those services, like QBO, payroll, merchant account. So if you have the wrong car, right? Like if you've logged in and you don't see the right car that you're expecting to see, there's really no way to move that. And that's like the question is you can't necessarily move that car over to another user unless you do that manually, right? So you've got things that are tied to the login, and then things that are tied to the services that are tied to the login. And if you want to move those, then you need to just do the whole inviting shelving. But keep in mind what's tied to the login before you do that, right? Because you cannot merge two different logins. Once a login's created, it's like the tire track at a garage, right? You can't back over it without severe tire damage happening here. So, and you can't take it back, right? So once it's created, it can't be deleted. It's just a matter of not using it from that forward. So if you're using desktop, you can see all this stuff on the F2 screen. So you're in a desktop file and you press F2, as long as you're logged in as the admin, you'll see this information in the upper right of the F2 screen. You'll see that auth ID that I mentioned earlier. That is who you are, right, when you're signed in. And then the company ID, that's the Intuit company ID that represents the services that are attached to that company that you can be granted access to. And then all this is playing out because if you probably noticed over the past few months that when you create a desktop file, you have to invite people as an Intuit account needs to be created. It's a pain, and if you do it, if you create the company file first, which when you're creating the file, and you can say I'm doing it for somebody else, so that your login doesn't become the primary admin of that Intuit company ID. You can then, and there are ways to reset the logins and the Intuit account that's there, so that your client can basically own their own company. But that's going to be something that helps with. I mean, the main thing that's at service to is security, right? And unfortunately, we end up having to do things that are pains when there are malicious people out there, right? So somebody gets a hold of this file, however that is, with the login, the company login as the user and password inside of the desktop company can be safeguarded with the Intuit account also being in place there. So that's the whole purpose. And so we talk about desktop migration. That will actually there's actually a benefit, right? So if you're moving away from desktop into online advanced, you'll see that'll actually be an advantage. So second poll here. How many QBO users does your average client have? Are they flying solo, somewhere between 2 and 5, or greater than 5? Any questions that came up, Michelle?
Yes. So I was answering somebody's got their account kind of all messed up, and yeah, you're going to have to contact support to try to help fix some of that. But Donna just asked a great one here, and it always brings up this huge debate. Question on the primary admin. What if you're the CPA and this is your file? You set it up and you do the accounting. Isn't it owned by the client? And the answer is yes. It is ultimately owned by the client. And if the client, let's say you get in a dispute with the client and you don't want to give them access to their records or anything, if the client contacts Intuit and proves you're the owner of the company, Intuit gives them access because it is their accounting data. Even though you may say, well, we're doing the work, this is our work product, this is our stuff, it's the client's accounting data. So ultimately, go ahead, Dan.
The caveat there is who's paying for it. Right. So if you're using your wholesale billing, or now it's called the ProAdvisor preferred pricing.
Yes.
If you're managing the billing, they cannot delete you as an accountant user until it's no longer under that situation. So as they can become the primary admin or the master admin, depending on how far back you're going, they can be the primary admin, but they still can't kick you out of their company unless you kick it out of your wholesale billing or the ProAdvisor preferred pricing discount. So I had the flip side of that. You know, when I worked there, is that they had a dispute, and their client owed them thousands of dollars, and they made the primary complaint. You know, the primary admin dispute, which is basically you have to prove to Intuit that you are who you say you are. You can't just say I'm the owner of the company. It's a legal process. They have to
Right. Forms
submit
and all kinds of
articles
stuff.
of confederation. No, that's the wrong articles of legal paperwork. That's the word. they have to substantiate the claim, and even though they are granted the primary admin access, they cannot delete that. Thank you, Jeff. The corporation. Even though they are the primary admin, as long as it's under wholesale or the PPP, the preferred ProAdvisor pricing, where you're paying into it for the subscription, you cannot be deleted. No account can be deleted in that situation. But as soon as and what happened was that as soon as he released the out of wholesale or out of the ProAdvisor, where he was no longer the billing, managing the billing, immediately they deleted him. And now he had no recourse, right? He had no recourse because he's no longer attached to that company. And he now had to substantiate his own claims by legal processes, and that was what was the only thing that he was clinging to. That from the company's aspect, they're probably saying, well, this guy's playing hardball. Like, well, yeah, I mean, they failed to mention that they owed him $10,000 or whatever that was in back billing. Right?
I'll tell you what, the best thing in situations like this is you don't get behind on the fees. I mean, if you're doing monthly work for your client, you get paid every single month, like on the 1st of the month or the 5th of the month, and you should not be getting behind on fees and things with clients. If you're not getting paid, you stop doing work. And yes, Trudy said, this is why you take retainers. Yes, we want to avoid these kind of situations because it's never pretty. If you get into that with your clients, it's never pretty and it never ends very well for either side. So try to avoid it if you can. So Dan, I'm going to let you continue on so we can get through the rest of this great content that you have.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about QBO Advanced Users, just kind of the fundamentals of that. So in QBO Advanced, you have up to 25 billable users, and we'll talk about what a billable user is versus a non-billable user in a moment. You can create location-based sales users. So, if you have territories and things like that, you can set up a location-based sales user. We'll talk a little bit about that. Custom roles, you can do customized roles, and you assign those to the users. There's additional user permissions for transaction types, and in QBO Advanced, you have 3 account users that can be invited. So you can have a bookkeeper, you can have a CPA, and you can have one other person be an accountant, somebody to be able to have access to those cool accountant tools that we talk about all the time. You can have 3 of those, and then unlimited reports and time entry users. So those are what are considered non-billable users. So you can have a reports only or time entry users set up. So when you're one of the things that's unique about QBO Advanced is the ability to create custom roles. So if you're familiar with Enterprise, this is a concept borrowed from QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise, creating roles first, so that way you can specify what areas someone of this type will be able to have access to, and then you assign that to your user when they are invited and granted access. So in this instance, you can see sales managers. They can add users added to this role can create invoices, receive payments, do all the other sales tax. tasks. And then inventory, they can modify their inventory. And you can customize these roles even further granularly. Granularly, is that a word? But there's 7 major areas that you can specify: sales, expenses, banking, inventory, workers, which is payroll, reports, and then account management. So the foundation, what they're doing is they're laying the foundation for greater customization. If you go to create a new custom role right now, you'll see that there's, I'll go to the next one here. So you can see there's a full access, view, create, edit, delete, but it's kind of grayed out. So as soon as you go in and create a custom role, you'll check something off for sales, for example, you'll see that you can temptingly click on these options of view, create, edit, and delete, but you can't do anything with them yet. So the way things are handling, the way things are going to be rolled out is this is the framework, this is the foundation for greater customization of the rules and permissions, but as they're available, then these checkboxes will become available. So with sales, you can say, you can create if you're using location tracking, or however you have it worded, whether it's department or business or what have you, you can specify a specific role by certain locations. And then what happens is that the people in that role will only be able to see sales transactions and the customers that are assigned to that location. So it helps segregate, especially Salesforce, where you have maybe territories and you don't want to necessarily have them co-mingling or intermingling with each other's issues or customers or sales transactions, modifying those types of things. QBO Advanced for the bill approver. This is something now that is live and available to use. So there is the task and workflows, when we talked about that in a prior webinar. You can now specify on the bill side that they're available to approve bills. So anyone with this preference or this option will be able to be selected in the bill approver dropdown. So when you're creating a workflow and you want to have someone approve the bills based on those criteria that you have set up, this person now will be able to be selected. Right now, without anything else, it would be just company admins, anybody who has full use or full access to QuickBooks. But now you can add this additional approver option to be able to be selected in that bill approver dropdown. So billable users. So you can have up to 25 users. Now the workflow is you create the role, and then you can assign those roles to users. Standard user is what it is currently, and plus and below. So when you choose that option, then you'll have the check boxes for the various areas, but not the granularity that you can assign in the roles. And then of course, a company admin is someone who has full access. They're not the primary admin. The primary admin is the first company admin. So, but you can transfer that between one or the other. But those are all billable users. Anybody who is a custom role, standard user, or company admin, those are what's considered billable. You aren't billed for them, but they count against the up to 25. Unbillable users, I didn't know another way to actually talk about these, but they don't count against the 25. I forgot to take that part out of the slide, but they don't count towards the user limit. So you have reports only users. These people will be able to run reports, but they cannot edit any transaction. So they'll be able to see any report with the exception of payroll. If you've got payroll turned on inside the QBO, you wouldn't be able to run the payroll reports because they need to have access as a payroll user. Time tracking, they'll be able to enter time entry. So If you got a field service workforce and you just want them to be able to enter in time, you can set them up as a time tracking only, where they can enter in only their own timesheets. You don't want to have buddy clocking in or anything like that. So any time entry user will only be able to access them as a time entry. And brand new, we just got a sneak peek of it last Tuesday, where you can, but it is live in the product. So give employees access to send expense claims. This is all it is a checkbox, but it's setting the foundation for people to do a lot of neat things as time entry only users. So again, they're still only in that time tracking only option, but they'll be able to send in documents right from their mobile phone to be able to do expense claims and track those back to customers. Now, one of the neat parts about QBO Advanced is the ability to preview your role. So, if you're doing this in desktop, you go and customize a role and permissions. If you want to see the fruits of your labor, you have to sign out, sign back in as that user, and see what you want them to see or not see. And if there's a change, then you need to sign out, sign back in as the admin, and make those changes, and then see if you hit the right spot, sign out, sign back in, and see what you've done. So when you're creating a role, there'll be a button down at the bottom that allows you to preview the role. And when you preview the role, you get this nice message. It says you're about to preview the role you've created. Any changes you make now, because you're still in the live company, but you're in as that person. If you do make that a change, like you edit an invoice, that's going to be saved permanently. So you'll see that in the audit log, and you'll see those changes actually made. But when you do that, you get this banner across the top where it says you're previewing the sales and expense role, or whatever role you called it. Any changes are going to be made in that. It's going to be saved permanently. But if you see something like you see on the right side, that person doesn't have the ability to see banking, right? So you can see in the preview that the bank accounts are blocked out for them. But if you do want to have them see that, you can click on edit permissions. It'll take you right back to the setting up the custom roles. And then you'll be able to make your changes, preview the role. Real big time saver to be able to do that. And then, of course, your left side navigator is going to be truncated based off of the permissions that you also see as well. So it won't be as big and bulky, or it's not just going to be wasted grayed out area. And then anything in the plus new, the quick create menu will be grayed out if they don't have access to that as well. So QB Desktop user migration. So this is a neat thing that they're working on. Again, it's only a QBO Advanced. QuickBooks Online Advanced will try, and I use that with quotes because I was trying to do it myself and I couldn't get it to work. So there are some nuances to it, right? As long as the users, the feedback I got from the folks that know is that it will try to create those users in advance. So if you've got some wonky customizations in your roles and the way those are set up, as long as there is a this for that exchange, which is the conversion between online and desktop with online, as long as it's got an exact match to land to, it will create that user in advance. If it's exact, it will create that role. If the role is created in QBO, they will need all they'll need to do at that point is be invited. So when we're talking about creating an Intuit account in desktop, how much that is a pain, because you're now associating the email address with that person in desktop. When it comes over to online, all you have to do, the user will already be set up. You just hit invite, and then they're off and running, right? So, and then of course you can preview the role before you actually, send the invitation. so that you know that they'll have what they'll have access to, what they won't have access to. All right, so last poll here. What do you think? What area of role customization should Intuit focus on first? Individual transactions, maybe adding estimates or checks, maybe more areas like mileage, taxes and tasks, those types of things, or just enhancements within certain areas, or maybe something else. If you got something else, to throw that in the chat. We'll be able to provide Intuit with that, with this feedback. Any questions, Michelle, that came up?
Yes. Okay. So Karen says she's an accountant and primary admin on a QBO company. She wants to change primary admin to somebody else, but QuickBooks won't let them change the primary admin. It says they got to fill out a form to transfer the primary admin.
Well, as long as that user is a admin in the QBO setup, they should be able to be transferred. Now, you can't take the primary admin from somebody, but you should be able to give it away.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Is it you have to delete them? Okay, so like let's say Dan and I are both in the same firm. If Dan is the primary admin right now and I want to move it to me or whatever, I believe you have to delete Dan first to get the primary admin away from him before you could assign me primary admin. Because you can't assign it to two people at once. Right. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's going to go through a whole email process. Like, as long as the biggest challenge that I've seen in the past is that login to log in as the primary admin is not accessible, right? Like if you, I just went through this recently. I, obviously moved, and my primary email, for my home was my cable provider, right? Well, I don't longer have cable or that internet service provider, so I don't have that email address anymore. I know I've forgotten to update that email address for some of the things that I needed to sign into. If that's no longer available to log into anymore, because now, for me, it's been deleted. And I got plenty of emails about that. Like, you got 90 days, 60 days, and I didn't go through everything because managing logins is a big challenge these days. Now I no longer have access to that email. That was typically the challenge, is whoever had access to that email is no longer in the picture, or that email address is no longer available. Now, there is a change email address form, right, where you have to prove who you are, just like everything else, any kind of change when that's not the case. But that was the biggest challenge, is that the primary admin user was unable to sign in for whatever reason, right? The email address is no longer in play, or that person who's attached to that email address is no longer employed by the company. But as long as you can change that email address and have access to that, you should be able to sign in as the primary admin, and at that point, transfer, right? As long as the other person is a company admin, they should be available to be able to do that. Now, there are lots of horror stories and water cooler moments, whereas things are broken, right? But that's the main idea. Being able to, as long as you can sign in, you should be able to transfer that. It won't happen until that person who you've assigned the transfer of primary admin to accepts it, right? They have to, much like a relay race at the Olympics, right? You can pass the baton, but if they never take it, it never happens until that person has actually grabbed a hold of the baton and taken it for the next leg. And then you'll get emails, once that's been confirmed. But that's the process that should be the case. Primary admin signs in, sees the available options of who can be associated with that primary admin, transfers it to them, they accept it, everybody's happy.
And this is great. Mary out in the chat said, if the primary admin or contact is unavailable to transfer the role to you, it's okay. Even if they're not around or can't make the change on their own, you can send a request to our account protection team. So they have a whole team that can help you with things like this. So, and Dan, I think you've got some more stuff, don't you? Or should we do some more questions?
No, this is, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Okay. Because we had good questions here. Okay. So now this is one where Maureen says her client's using it advanced. All right. And she says, do you have any idea when the grayed out permissions will be available to use? They want read only access for some salespeople. Well, if something's grayed out, that means that user role didn't give them permission for that. So if you want them to have read only access for some salespeople, that sounds to me like reports only. Would that be right, Dan? Because that gives them read only access.
Right. And I think the other underlying question to her question is, when are we going to be able to have the ability to check those boxes? So if I go back on the slides here, like here, right? So as soon as I choose bills, the only two options I have to click on is approve and full access. If I choose full access, everything gets checked off. View, create, edit, and delete. I can't uncheck view, create, edit, and delete. So if you wanted to be able to have somebody who just can view it, right, that's a reports only person. But if you want to have somebody create it and somebody to edit it, right? So like you can in enterprise, you can have somebody set up that just creates transactions and doesn't edit it, and other people that edit transactions and don't create them, right? So it gives you the permissions access that you're looking for with checks and balances types of things. These are not available to be clicked on yet, and they're going to be rolled out, as those features are available, right? It's just a teaser at this point. So like when you see these, this full view, create, edit, delete, as those things roll out, they'll become available. But we don't have any insight as to when, but that's why they're there, is that as things are this is part of the foundation, right? Like as view and create become available for bills, it'll just be available to check off, right? So that's the idea, but I don't have a date, and even if I did have a date, I couldn't tell.
Couldn't tell. Okay, so here's another one. It says, how do you delete a client file with you as a user? They decided not to use my services, and then the client created another QBO subscription. So the client invites you as a user, but then they're not using that. They're using another QBO company. That just sits out there and shows up on your list of companies. Yeah. Any way to get that out? Like, can you contact support and they can take you out as a user?
Well, I mean, if you're paying for it, if you're doing the wholesale or the ProAdvisor or anything like that, is that what we're
no, it sounds like a client invited this accountant as an accountant user. Then they decided not to use me. They created a whole nother QBO subscription. So yeah, it's an old company even.
I've seen it a couple of ways. Like there used to be a way that you could just go in and delete your access, and that severed any connection because they were the primary admin. They just invited you as the accountant. If they started their own QBO subscription, a different QBO subscription, that does make it a little bit more challenging because they're not using the active one that you were access to. It's best to call into it at that point and see if you can be deleted. I know someone has the ability to remove you. It's just who you talk to, right? I used to have access to be able to do that, but no longer employed there, so I don't have the ability to do that. But somebody does, whether it's an escalation or something along those lines. Just talk to somebody, and if you don't need access to it, you can be removed, because that does pose an extra bit of a challenge, right? When you have access to somebody that you no longer do business with, you don't want to be potentially inadvertently, like if you choose the company chooser and then go, oh, I accidentally went in there, and then they see that in the audit log, and now you're in another situation where you don't want to be in. Best just to sever the connection altogether. But yeah, reach out to Intuit and see if you can get that cleared off. And as we learned last time, the best way to reach out to Intuit is inside the product. Click on the help icon at the top, and then let that either choose the callback option or chat or whatever other options that they have there.
Okay, so we have another couple of questions here. So here's one that Maureen made a comment. They need to fix email problems, or at least link email with Outlook. We have major issues with no CC emails, no place to keep additional email info, and email needs to be typed every time I send a report. If I remember correctly, Dan, and I haven't been in there for a while, but you can go into the accountant settings, and where you control the email information, you can put in there to CC or BCC someone on those, so that it automatically pulls those and you don't have to type it in there every time. So Maureen, I think go look in the accountant settings in the section where you put in the default email template and stuff. And I'm pretty sure you can assign a CC or BCC there. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, for outgoing emails like sales transactions and purchase orders and those types of things, you should be able to BCC or CC yourself. But I think what she's referring to is reports. And as long as you're scheduling the reports, I don't think you need to do that. But what you might be referring to is if I email this report to somebody, I got to type in the email every time, which is probably true, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Okay, then here's another anonymous question. Is QBO Advanced only available to ProAdvisors that pay for it monthly? Do not have clients that use Advanced either. So the good news is, I don't know, Dan, what was it, a few months back, our Your Books is now QBO Advanced. You've got, if not all the features, you've got most of the features. So Your Books is QBO Advanced. There's also a test company out there that you can play around with. I will get that link for you. Or actually, if you just Google QuickBooks Test Drive, you'll find the link for both the regular test drive as well as the advanced test drive out there.
Yeah, so you should be, it's only US, right? Because the US region only has advanced. So if your firm books should all be, should all be migrated. Now, the caveat there is what were you doing inside of your books prior to that, right? So if you were using QuickBooks Time or T-Sheets, that has caused challenges in the migration process. And the more complex your data is, the further back in the priority you are, because they want to do it right. They want to do the migration with as least interruption to your service as possible. They don't always get it right, but that's why if you don't see it, then you're probably using something a little bit more complex in the process, and they're still waiting to clear out some of those issues before getting the green light to actually convert you to or migrate you to QBO Advanced. So if you're a ProAdvisor and you're using QBO Your Books should be advanced.
Okay, and then somebody has a question here. Has QBO Online Bill Pay changed back from Melio to Bill.com? And I don't think it has. It's still Melio, correct?
Yeah.
If you want to use Bill.com as a third-party app, you can do that. But the one that's built in and has free features is Melio, right, Dan? That's not changed.
Right. Yeah. I've not heard anything to the contrary, but that doesn't mean that you can't use Bill.com if you if you choose to. So the situation was before Melio was integrated. QuickBooks Online had a QuickBooks Online Bill Pay powered by Bill.com. Right. So it's kind of like a Bill.com light directly with direct
Right.
integration into QuickBooks Online. That's still there, right? That's not gone away. It's a little bit more of a challenge because accountant users can't set it up or play with it or do anything with it, because there's issues with users and permissions on the on the bill.com side of things. So so it didn't go back, but you may be able to see it a little bit more prevalently. So you should be able to choose either. But of course, Melio is free ish, as they call it.
So Dave had an additional question regarding this Melio and bill.com. Says the problem I'm having is that if you use the bill.com, they can't switch it to Melio within the product. You have to use Melio and Link.
Yeah, I can see that being a sticking point with one or the other.
Okay, a couple more here, Dan. Can you clarify? Okay, somebody wants to know about accountant users can't be the primary admin user too, but she's set up as both in the company, and we used to have master admin, now we have primary admin. Can you clear this up, Dan?
Yeah, so if you the master admin is the first admin to touch the file, right? So I mean that's we just had Indigenous Peoples Day, Columbus Day. Right? The first people who were there were the indigenous people. They were the master admins of America. Right? Well, he took a claim. he claimed it for himself, right? So he did not go through the proper channels to prove he had the option to do that, right? And other discussions and debates about what Columbus may or may not have done, that's another story. But same kind of example, though, is that you can be the primary admin and the accountant user. You don't have to be unless you want to be, right? But the challenge is if you take up the primary admin, that's one of the billable users. So if you're using Essentials, now the client only has the ability to have an invitation for 2 other users, right? If you're using the concern is that you could be deleted as the accountant, right? The caveat is that if you're paying for it through your wholesale billing or ProAdvisor preferred pricing, you can't be deleted. So the safety net of I need to be the primary admin because I'm paying for it is no longer the case, because no one can be deleted as an accountant if it's under the wholesale billing model where the accountant is paying for it. So if the direct billing, right, if the client is direct billing through Intuit, paying for it, or you're paying, if your billing information is in the billing and subscription area, yes, you can be deleted if you're not the primary admin. So that's a caveat. As long as it's under wholesale billing, you can't be deleted as the accountant. So rest assured and feel better about transferring the primary admin to a client. If it's under wholesale, you can't be deleted.
Okay, and we had one.
I don't know.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we had another final question here, and I can't remember the number. What's the upper reasonable limit for how many employees you can have using Intuit Payroll? It seemed like it was like a couple hundred employees.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I always get my desktop and online. I think it's 150 for active employees with QuickBooks Payroll.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And one final question here. Is there any reason you would be both primary and master admin?
Well, those are interchangeable terms. So
synonyms.
If you're one or the other, yeah, if you're one or the other, historically it was called master admin, and now it's the terminology being used is primary admin. So you can't be both of them because you are only one person can be the master admin or primary admin. But if you were the accountant user and the primary admin, I think that's the question that was being asked there.
All right. And one
Yes.
final
So
question.
they
Oh, go
said,
ahead.
okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Both accountant, user, and primary, right? So there is no need if you're wholesale billing, there really isn't a reason to be the primary admin. What does happen is that the primary admin gets subscription based information. So if you transfer that to your client and your billing goes south, they'll get notified about that. So that may be a reason not to transfer the primary admin of that subscription, but it's entirely up to you.
All right. And we had one final question here. Can the preset roles that are made by Intuit in there, can you delete those and start over?
I don't think you can.
You could remove permissions from people and then start over reassigning new positions. But yeah, I don't think you can delete those roles. You just wouldn't use them.
Yeah, and it'll list on the screen. I think it's on the screen like how many people have how many users are assigned to that. Oh, the QuickBooks roles are below that, where it has the company admin and those types of things. But these are the custom roles that we're looking at here. But yeah, I don't think they can be deleted to just not used. It's kind of like that extra login that's created.
Yeah.
So we did have an hour of stuff to talk about here.
Well, Dan, as always, it was a very technical topic, and you took us through it, and we appreciate you sharing all that technical, detailed discussion with us. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and see you in 2 weeks where we talk about customer service. I believe is the next one, right, Dan?
That's right.
All right. So thank you, everybody.